So this is the brand new Suunto Vertical 2, a watch been putting through its paces over the last little while, including an absolutely epic near 15-hour hike, 70 kilometers in one shot, all to test out the battery on this and its claims that it is the same as the Suunto Vertical 1. Which is a pretty big deal because one of the big changes in this watch is the fact that it's gone from a MIP-based display here to a AMOLED display. In fact, more than that, Suunto is saying that this basically marks the end of the era of MIP-based displays. You won't be seeing any new models introduced in the MIP-based display realm from Suunto. They do currently make some dive models that have MIP-based displays, and they will continue selling the Suunto Vertical 1 until they're, well, out of stock of it. But the other interesting thing here is that this now has a flashlight. So I can hold a button there. It's got an LED flashlight. They're the very first Suunto watch to have a flashlight. And I think that's a big deal because they're starting to see other companies implement the flashlight, like Amazfit just about a month or so ago with the T-Rex Pro, T-Rex 3 Pro, having a flashlight as well. Now, I'm going to dive into all the newness on this watch, keeping in mind that it is basically like a Suunto Race 2, except with the vertical name, a flashlight, and a few other changes. I'm going to dive into all of those half a dozen or so changes a little bit later on in the video. And hey, just a quick note, if you are finding this video interesting and useful, if you could just simply watch it all the way through, that's the only thing the YouTube gods care about. In the same way that I just, went all the way through that 15-hour hike yesterday, it really does help with the video and the channel quite a bit. So the very first thing to talk about here is this flashlight. Now, flashlights are not new to watches, of course, as I mentioned. Garmin has them on their watches as well. Now, just like Garmin's, there are basically two modes. There's the white light mode that you see there. It has 4 brightness levels. That's full brightness, 75, 50, 25, and then into the red light mode as well. However, unlike Garmin's, they also make easily accessible an SOS flash that you can see right there, flashing automatically, as well as a breathing mode. The light will kind of dim slowly back and forth there to work on your breathing. And then down below that, you have an alert mode that is in red. Now, Garmin has various SOS and flashing modes, but they're really buried down in the menu, versus this is in the main menu itself of the flashlight. Now, to access that flashlight, as I mentioned, you're just going to hold that upper right-hand button to turn it on and off. Well, sorry, turn it on. To turn it off, it's a bit messier. You have to go ahead and press that right button there that basically says to turn it off. And now you're at the off screen, and you have to either swipe out of that or go down and then click back. It's kind of a mess. And to be fair to Suunto, they understand it's a bit of a mess, but the mess doesn't exactly end there. And thankfully, these are all easily solvable via software updates. And it sounds like Suunto understands, again, this is a mess. They're going to fix some of these things from a UI standpoint. But let me just kind of run through my list here of solid annoyances. One, when you turn it on, every single time it turns on at 50% brightness. That's a pain in the butt because most time I use this flashlight at night, just like simple things, getting around the house, hotel rooms, etc. And it's always going to blind me at 50% brightness because that's pretty darn bright, versus the other flashlights in the market will turn on to whatever the last setting was. I prefer red at night or the lowest level white, but not this. Number two, that long hold doesn't work in anything other than like the watch face. If you're in any menu at all, you've got to back out to the watch face, and even worse, if you're in a sport mode, you have to go into the controls menu and enable it there. It's a whole scene. Next, that flashlight menu that I mentioned there just doesn't go away. I said to Suunto, it's like a bad fart in a small hot room. It's just gonna linger for a long time, and it just lingers there on the screen for a very long time until it finally disappears. Next, there is no running modes or anything like that. So one of the things that the Garmin watches have is like a stable flash mode that you can use when you're running just so other people can see you. That's pretty handy. I use it occasionally. And in Garmin and Amazfit's case, it even turns on after sunset automatically, so you don't have to think about it. It just happens. Again, Suunto says they understand these things aren't there today, and they're, again, relatively easy things to add in the future via software. Now, the next thing that's new on this watch is the new AMOLED display. And this will definitely ruffle some feathers. Now, compared to the previous Suunto Vertical 1, this was a MIP-based display with a solar ring around the outside there. This got at 65 hours in dual frequency mode and up to 85 and 90 hours in solar if you had the right sunny conditions. But the problem with all solar watches is that depends on the right sunny conditions, and you don't always get that. So we're just going to go with a 65-hour claim there. That is the same claim as the new Suunto Vertical 2 with AMOLED. And that's even before we talk about the other 3 modes, 75 hours in single band, all the way up to 250 hours in tour mode. I cannot, though, overstate how big of a deal it is that these two watches have the same dual frequency battery life. This is the first time we've seen any company come anywhere near that from a claims standpoint, let alone an actual real life standpoint. So I decided to test that. Yesterday I went out for nearly 15 hours, single shot hiking up into the mountains, 70 kilometers all in. And I wasn't going to baby this, so I switched to always on display because that's what I always use on all of my devices. So always on display. I had a navigation route loaded in this, so it's going to tell me where to go, and I'll follow that route and continually check the map and stuff like that. And I had all the other settings, so optical heart rate sensor on, etc. And this watch burned pretty consistently the entire time, 2% an hour, getting to basically 50 hours of battery life as an estimate there. That is, yes, below the 65-hour claim, but that claim doesn't include things like the always-on display, doesn't include the navigation, doesn't include all the things being turned on that I had turned on. That is super impressive. It notably also beats the Garmin Fenix 8 Micro LED, this beefcake of a watch. It beat it from a battery burn standpoint, at least for the first half, and the second half was a little bit different when I turned off some settings on the Garmin, but still super impressive job there. It also matched a MIP-based display watch as well, again with an AMOLED display. Battery life isn't an issue on this watch. Neither is visibility. Of course, with an AMOLED display, there's basically two modes. There's always on, which is what I use, which means that when you have your wrist down, it's going to show this screen right here. Well, not that one, the one it's going to change to in just a second with the kind of the faint outline there. And that's basically the dim state. So it goes ahead and saves battery in that dim state. Should be, there we go, right there. Now, I would argue this dim state on this particular watch is not awesome. I don't like the dim state here. I wish Suunto would do something different with these numbers, so it's a little bit easier to read there. Right now it's just kind of thin. It's not super awesome, but that again is an easy software fix for them to make. And then the other mode just simply turns off the display entirely until you raise your wrist. I had no problems with wrist raise detection. All that worked great, nor any problems in bright sunny conditions. I live on a bright sunny island in the Mediterranean, whether it was swimming with this or running or riding, etc. in bright sunny conditions, zero problems whatsoever seeing the display because it's a 2000 nit display, and even 1000 nit displays are plenty bright enough in these sort of condition. Now, the next thing they've added here is a new optical heart rate sensor on the back. This is the same optical heart rate sensor as seen on the Suunto Race, and it is pretty much just as accurate as that as well. Here's an example from a tempo run that I did on Thursday or so, and you can see it has one little bobble at the beginning there, but otherwise it's stable the rest of the time. As we increased our pace over the course of the run, it held on just fine. A couple little minor variations at the top end, about 2 to 4 beats per minute, kind of variations occasionally drifting in the last 8 or 9 minutes there, but otherwise pretty darn close, in leagues ahead of Suunto's past watches when it comes to optical heart rate sensors, which were definitely hot mess territory, entirely unusable for most sports scenarios. This now comes into the camp of fully usable for most sports scenarios. The other thing you're going to notice on the back of this watch is a new placement of the charging connector. So you can see it's different than the Suunto Vertical in the past, and that's notable because this one doesn't suck anymore. In the past, their magnetic charging would constantly fall off. It just wasn't super awesome. Here, I can just hang it like this. I can swing it around. It's going to stay put. If you have a past Suunto watch, you would know that it would just not even come close to this. Like if you looked at it wrong, it'd be like boop and fall right off. This thing, no problems at all. It's a good deal there. And in fact, it's also worthwhile noting they added the ability to do map downloads without the charging cable. That's handy because if you didn't have your charging cable and forgot to download a map and just need to do it really quick off your phone's hotspot or Wi-Fi hotspot, in the past you couldn't do that. Now you can, which is just a nice little touch. Another thing that added with the Race 2 that's also carried into the Vertical 2, because again, they're almost the same watch, is improved climb guidance. The first one is the elevation profile of the entire course, and then including your point on that course and how much you're remaining on that course. And the second piece is the upcoming or current climb that you're on right now. So in my case, this is a climb from yesterday, and it shows me the ascent to the top of the climb, the distance to the top of the climb, and so on. This is just super handy when you got any sort of climb to be able to know how much suffering until the top of the climb. It also counts the number of climbs you have and how many climbs you have remaining. Next, they've increased the processor speed as well as the memory, not just the storage memory, but like the RAM type memory. And the result is a far faster user interface. If I just simply scroll to the menus here, you can see how much faster this is compared to the Suunto Vertical 1. Again, exact same as the Suunto Race. They also added multi-sensor pairing in like you saw on the Race 2 as well. That means you can now save multiple sensors of the same type, so multiple power meters. That's probably the main use case there. So you can have, one bike and another bike and a trainer and save those all into the watch and easily switch back and forth between them. Now from a GPS standpoint, I'll spend like 60 seconds on this because it hasn't really changed very much. It's very accurate like before. If you look at this simple run right here I did, no problems, GPS accuracy, spot on. This was a relatively easy scenario compared to the next one, which is the hike I did up into the mountains. This is against rock cliffs and all that kind of fun stuff, and it's spot on with both the Apple Watch Ultra 2 as well as the Garmin Fenix 8 Pro micro LED. Again, no problems at all from a land-based GPS accuracy standpoint, but like the Race 2, when it came to open water swimming, I continue to see bad results with Suunto. If you look at this track right here, you'll see it is not good, and neither is the Apple Watch Ultra 2, 3 that was with it as well. I did have a reference swim buoy with it, but my buoy sunk. The buoy that was on my back that got a hole and it went under, so the watch went under, so the watch has no track. Here's the track from the watch, not very useful. But I was swimming a buoy line on this bay, which means that I was basically just swimming a buoy every 58 meters, so it was very, very straight track, and this is not a very straight track. Also, I didn't swim over the land either, so lots of problems. Eventually, Suunto might make a watch that is accurate in open water swimming, but this is not that watch. But for land-based activities, good job, no problems there at all. And then likewise, from an elevation standpoint, that was spot on. It's super cool to see elevation data from 3 watches be within 5 meters the entire time, the entire day, within 5 meters. Like, kudos there on all 3 of those companies on nailing that. Okay, so let's talk about pricing, how it differs compared to the Race 2, and we'll wrap things up. So from a price standpoint, they did raise the price from $499 to $599. However, the titanium version stays the same at $699. So that is still there at the same price as before, but the base price did go up, which then gets to how it compares against the Suunto Race 2, which is at $499. As I said, these are basically the same watches from an internal standpoint. They have all the same features, all that's the same. It is purely hardware differences. So number 1, the Vertical 2 has an LED flashlight. The Suunto Race 2 does not. Number 2, the Vertical 2 has more battery life. You can see the battery differences in a little chart down below right there, including those higher-end tour modes that just get quite a bit more battery life. Number 3, it also has a more daily battery life, as 20 hours versus 16 hours on the Race 2. Number 4, it is a little bit thicker, about 1 millimeter thicker, so it's 13.5 millimeters thick versus 12.5 on the Race 2. Number 5, whatever we're up to right now, the Vertical has more metal. In particular, if you look on the sides and the lugs, so the lugs are these pieces right here, where that extends all the way around on the Race 2 over here, that is all plastic. Here on the Vertical 2, that is all metal. Again, materials differences there. Both are offered in stainless steel and titanium for the rest of the case portions, but that piece there is plastic on the Race 2. And then lastly, the Race 2 has a rotating digital crown that you see right there in the middle, versus the Vertical 2 has 3 buttons. I'm pretty happy with the buttons. I prefer buttons. I find digital crowns on most watches, Apple and everyone else included, not awesome for sport usage. Maybe fine for like day-to-day stuff, but I find in most sport usage scenarios, they're not great. The only exception to that will be zooming in and out of a map, but buttons still do that just fine as well. So let's get into some final thoughts here. I think there's a lot of confusion from people on why Suunto released another model that's only $100 more that is essentially the same as the Race 2, except with the flashlight and better bezels and better battery and better, that's why, right? There's more features, so you pay more. It's the same as every one of their competitors. Coros has the Apex and the Apex Pro. Garmin has the Forerunner 570 and then the Venue 4 that are nearly identical, except the things they aren't. Suunto has the Race and the Race S. There are countless examples of this, and this is just one more example. I think some of the confusion though stems from the fact that people were expecting a MIP-based display. But when Suunto delivers in an AMOLED display the same battery life as a MIP-based display, there becomes less and less of a reason to get a MIP-based display, especially because the majority of the market, like the overwhelming majority of the market, wants an AMOLED display as opposed to MIP-based display. Yes, there are those that want a MIP-based display for a variety of reasons. Historically, it's been battery life. And yes, if you compare it to a solar unit, it's going to get less battery life than a solar unit on a sunny day. I showed that in my Vertical 1 review with a crazy long hike there as well, and the actual battery life in real world. But the vast majority of people are doing activities less than 65 hours or even less than the 50 hours of navigation here. Suunto simply does not have the market share anymore to be able to make models that are money losers. And my guess is that going forward, a MIP-based Vertical would have been a strong money loser. But on the flip side, they're doing the right things. They now have what is clearly the best AMOLED battery life in the market, period. There's no other watch that comes close to that on spec or in real life. They're adding in things like the flashlight that people have been asking for from other manufacturers. They've done that. And they're adding in lots of little software features that people want as well. All while keeping the price relatively reasonable. We're not seeing $2,000 Suunto watches right now. We're seeing watches that are roughly in the same ballpark of price as they were previously, compared to companies like Garmin showing dramatic price increases. So it's hard to fault Suunto at this point in time for simply delivering to the market what the market asked for. Anyways, hope you found this video interesting and useful. Thanks for watching, and there's plenty more sports tech. My backlog is big right now. With that, have a good one.